So I made a video a couple years ago where I broke down the 3 published books by Hanya Yanagihara, the author, and I had a lot of fun doing that. In this case, we have the lovely Sally Rooney, who is an Irish author, and she has written quite a few books that are pretty popular, especially because 2 of them had adaptations on Hulu. So I am gonna go ahead and break them down, each of them, and tell you which order you should read them in. This is literary fiction and this is Sally Rooney, so it really, at the end of the day, is really not about a plot. There's no plot in any of these that's specific. It's really just about the relationship between the characters and what they mean to each other and how they interact with each other and with themselves and in the world. If you want to skip what the books are about, you can look at the timestamps and just go skip to the actual recommendation. The first novel that she published was Conversations with Friends, which is actually, I think, my favorite. It's tied between this and another one, but this one means a lot to me. I love this book so much. This book tells the story of a young woman named Frances and her friend Bobby. They live in Ireland. All of her books take place in Ireland. It's the story about their friendship. This is core literary fiction book, so it's really just about the characters and their friendship and their relationship with each other, but also how they start interacting with this other older couple, Melissa and Nick. They are very impressed by them and they're very attracted to them. And so Frances, begins this sort of relationship thing with Nick, who is older, and then Bobby is sort of infatuated with Melissa. Bobby and Frances are poets and they write emails to each other, and so a lot of the book is also, you see a lot of like their snippets of their emails to each other. I don't know, this book actually inspired a lot more than I was gonna say that I give it credit for, but I actually give it a lot of credit. I think every time I go to a bookstore, I always point it out to anyone I'm with because I love it. Next, we have probably, I would say, the most popular of her books, and that is Normal People. This is actually the first book I read by her because it was super popular. And it tells the story of Connell and Marianne, these 2 young kids who meet when they're in school, pretty young, when they're, I think, like 16, and then you see them grow up quite a bit throughout the years and see how their relationship evolves and changes. And what I remember the most about this, because it was the first one I read and I have not reread it, so I don't remember all of it so well, but what I most took from it was the realism in the dynamic between Marianne and Connell, how they grow apart quite a bit throughout the years, and it's something that I feel like you wouldn't expect in terms of a story. You would expect them to be together or to be around each other a lot, but because we follow both of their perspectives, you actually see them both living their own lives, and at times they don't see each other for a long time, and so I find it to be really interesting. There is a scene in this book that takes place at some sort of bar, and then it's like the aftermath of the bar and something happens, and I remember it being very descriptive. I remember it being very vivid. I remember being very immersed, and again, this was my first time reading Sally Rooney's writing, and so I was really sort of like thrown into this thinking it was going to be some sort of like romance story, but I would say this is way more than just a romance story. As opposed to all of her books, this probably ranks as my least favorite, and so it escapes me quite a bit oftentimes. It's more centered on the romance or the relationship between Marianne and Connell, as opposed to Conversations with Friends really is more about the friendships and the dynamic between an older person and a younger person, whereas this one focuses more on someone who you're literally parallel with growing up and growing apart and all that. So yeah, love. Next, we have this book that I remember when I read it, I felt like I genuinely shifted directions in terms of the books that I was reading. I think it's definitely not for everyone though, and that is Beautiful World, Where Are You? This book tells the story of another 3 people. So it's Simon, Felix, Eileen, and Alice, I'm pretty sure. Eileen and Simon live in a certain section of Ireland, and then Alice and Felix live in Dublin. It's actually about the relationship between those 2 couples. It's not romantic couples as of yet. There is a connection between Simon and Eileen and Alice, where Eileen actually used to know Simon since they were really young, and so there's that sort of like normal people coming in again. And then there's Felix and Alice who have just met, and the book actually opens on their first date. You sort of see this new interaction. But what's interesting about this one that's different from the other two is that where those two focus heavily on pairs, so friendships and then a romantic relationship, this one focuses heavily on individual characters. And so even though you see them all interact at once at some point, and you also see them interact with each other a lot, you also see their individual lives. So I remember reading this book and being really into Felix's personal life, even though it was not even really the center of the story. So it's really about the balance between the individual lives and how they all complement each other. It is a fun one. And finally, we have her most recent release, which actually came out, I think, September of last year in 2024. When she announced this one, I was counting down the days. I pre-ordered it. I was there that day when it came out. I started reading that day. I think this is officially my favorite Sally Rooney book, and that is Intermezzo. It is a classic. Like, it is a classic. I've heard people say that this book is going to be a classic, and I can definitely see it being a classic, or at least it feels like a classic. It reads like a classic. And what do I mean by that? Let me explain. This book tells the story of two brothers. We have Peter and we have Ivan. Ivan is a chess prodigy, and then we have Peter, who is a lawyer, and he's completely different from Ivan, where he's more stern and reserved, whereas Ivan is more curious and free, and they're very interesting characters. There's also a few other characters in it, as you could imagine with Sally Rooney. You get to see actually a lot of these characters and who they know and who they are and what they do. And this one tackles the age gap relationship just like Conversations with Friends does. But I think it tackles it way better and more like headstrong, more forward. As someone who has been in a couple age gap relationships, I think this one captured it the best, especially between Margaret and Ivan. Margaret is actually older than Ivan, and there's this power dynamic, and there's this interesting plot. It's phenomenal. It's about how they meet and how they all connect, and Ivan and Peter are very at odds, but they love each other, and there's things with their mom and the dog, and there's just, again, pure lit fic, but there's a lot going on, and I think it's a phenomenal book. It's tricky to pinpoint exactly where to start because it really just depends on what you like to read. So I would say if you like books that are more focused on romance and more focused on relationships between people who are romantically involved with each other and go throughout time together, I would definitely say starting with Normal People would be your route if you're more into romance. As opposed to all of them, Normal People to me feels the most romantic, and it's just because it does have an emphasis and a focus on two people that do have romantic feelings for each other eventually, and they change and they evolve like real life, but it's really a focus in it. And so I think Normal People would be a good way to start there. But if you're not a romance person, or if you're more of a literary seriousness, world issues, what's gonna happen with the world, relationships between people, but that is not fully romantic, it's more of like friendships, and if you value friendship that feels very intimate, then I would definitely recommend starting with Beautiful World, Where Are You? Because we have Alice and we have Eileen who email each other, and so this relationship is really intimate. They email each other about really specific things, and they really narrow topics down, and they really break down the state of the world, and it focuses way more on that. If you're looking for romance, I would say this is definitely not where to start, just because the romance in here is next to nothing. There is more of like a discovery in the romance, because we have two people who have known each other for a long time, and then we have two people who have just met. And so it's more like that balance between, yeah, there's like these couples, but really what we're really talking about are the two girls talking to each other. And so it's more about that. If you're more of a person who is more focused on a specific character, if you like books or movies that are more about one character and their relationship with everyone else around them that stems from them, but ultimately at the end of the day you're focused on this one character, then I would say Conversations with Friends is your friend. Yes, it talks about Bobby and Nick and Melissa, but at the end of the day, this book is about Frances. It's all about her, and it's all about her reflection and the big mistakes she makes throughout the book. I think if you're more of a one character person, if you're more of an individual person, you like to see the actions turn into consequences for that one character and see the people around this one character changing and evolving and morphing because of the decisions that this one character is making, this is gonna be your book. Now, if you are more of a classics person, if you like books that are dense, if you appreciate family dramas, or if you appreciate sports or chess, it's not really about their relationship with other people, but it's more about their own growth in their own heads, and it feels like it's more of like a mature, dense, slower process, then I would say Intermezzo is gonna be for you. I usually never recommend to read Intermezzo first. I have had friends and people say that they wanna start with this one, and I only recommend this one first if you already have the idea that it's going to be a dense book. It's going to be a read. Out of all of her books, this one to me feels the densest, but the most rewarding, if that makes sense. We have Intermezzo and then we have Beautiful World. These two are pretty dense books, but I would say this one's denser, but it has more payoff. Whereas this one, it's not as dense. It has more of a leeway, but it doesn't have my favorite ending. It doesn't have my favorite payoff. Whereas this one, I do feel like that ending lands perfectly. I feel like the characters have this growth that feels compelling. I feel like the family drama between the two guys, the two brothers, is exquisite. And so if you already know if you already know what you're getting yourself into, and you feel like this really is the one that's calling to you, then I would say by all means go for it. Start with this one, but just know that it is probably not the best, most adequate or easiest introduction into Sally Rooney's world, just because of that specific thing, you know? So yeah, as opposed to the other video I made about Hanya Yanagihara, where I say, you know, I say for you to start with A Little Life, for this one, it's not really up to the books, but up to you where to start in terms of what you like. It doesn't matter where you start, but if you really are trying to find the perfect one to start with, just look back at yourself and think of what you like to read, what you like to consume, what you prioritize in a story, and you can definitely find, you know, your way in. So anyway, that is it for this video. I just wanted to come back. I had been looking at my older video where I talked about Hanya Yanagihara, and I really wanted to do this again with another author, especially because it's been a few years now, so I've read more. And I definitely want to come back and do a couple other authors that I have in mind. That is it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I am gonna go ahead and leave. I'm so hungry, but I'll definitely be back. I'll be back sooner, hopefully sooner than later, with more of these books and specifics and where to start. And I hope that if you do end up reading Sally Rooney, who is one of my favorites of all time, that you do enjoy it and that you have a good time and that you take away from them as much as I have. So anyway, bye.